You're watching In the Office. My name is Bray. Let's do some quote learning. Today for episode number 34, we need to cover this idea about impugning motives first. When it comes to you and I carrying out our daily lives, there are people that we interact with that have bad motives. It's inescapable. Every sphere that me and you're in have people that exist there with bad motives. Now, here's the tricky part. How do we call them into an account for their bad motives when the way to lose the public perception is to be the first one to impugn someone else's motives? When I have interactions with people about topics that we sharply disagree with, if I'm the first person to impugn their motives, then they have that talking point towards me. They're able to immediately bite back harder than my initial charge. If you've ever went to purchase a vehicle or something of enough amount of money that you can negotiate, whether it's furniture or a house, you understand that the first person to throw out a number tends to be at a disadvantage. Why? Because the other person has that power of reaction. If you're simply asking somebody a price, then they expect you to be on the up and up with being cordial. However, when it comes to calling someone out for something that they've done, if you do not do so with a kind manner and a good spirit, then it seems a little out of left field. That gives them the power of reaction. So many times I've made the mistake of going to call somebody out and just getting to the point, because I like to not mince words. I want to get to the point so that we can fix this and move on. That's part of my conflict resolution mistakes of the past, where I try to fix problems too quickly. But what I've learned now with some experience and some wounds to lick is that if you're going to do sound conflict resolution, you need to take a little bit more time to do so. Because the first person to impugn the other's motives tends to lose the narrative, or lose the upper hand, or the ability to control the situation. Because if you do come up to somebody and you impugn their motives, and you do so even if you're 100% correct, their ability to bite back at you and their ability to attack you for all of your missing the marks is going to happen. And then that's not going to be constructive, because now you're going to have a contest of you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, and that really will not get you anywhere. But the problem remains that we have people in our spheres that do bad things and have bad motives. How are we going to, if you will, purify, or how are we going to bring about this to a better place where these people have to be held to account? Let me just say that I have much experience in trying to do this, and it's not going to be easy, because you're going to deal with people's egos, your own first and then that of someone else's. It's going to take two really humble people to be able to move forward. Many times it simply doesn't work out, but many times resolutions happen, people can agree on terms, and they can move forward. But remember, you know that this person has bad motives. They clearly don't understand their motives, or are blinded or jaded by their motives. And you're going to have to somehow convince them to detach themselves from either their emotional argument, or from their misinformation, if in fact that's what you're dealing with. That's going to be a high bar task, but it can be done if you play the long game. I would warn you this: do not allow people to keep themselves insulated from you holding them accountable, because that you're afraid of the blowback that could happen. That's going to happen. Leadership causes blowback. People are going to misunderstand you. But be willing to do it anyway. All of these parents that are standing up to school boards, that are teaching their children garbage and what is essentially racism, just with a shoe on the different foot, and all of these theories about things that cause people to hate themselves and to grow in self-loathing. These parents that go and they stand before these school boards, they get impugned by everybody else. And yet they first had to levy the charge. But in truth, who is to blame? Well, probably those school boards that allowed all of this garbage to come in, either knowingly or not. But because the way the system's set up, parent comes in, they make their accusations, and then all of a sudden the ammo gets fired back on them from 50 different places. Impugning motives first will cause you to look bad in some instances, but there are some hills that are worth fighting for. There's some hills that we just have to go up on, and that's okay. I've learned that decisions are not always popular, but they have to be made. That's why leadership, true leadership, is not nearly as glamorous as most people think that it is. Many times you have to deal with people not understanding, not having the full scope of information, judging you, impugning your motives. So here's what's funny, and we'll bring this to a close. When you impugn the motives of other people, from them to you, that is the cardinal sin. But immediately after you impugn their motives, they turn right around and they impugn yours without any second thought of the matter. So once you've basically taken off the gloves, the fight has begun. But it is a funny thing in this life how hypocritical we can be. That the impugning motives being that highest sin. Oh, you're saying that I'm a liar, or you're saying that I'm doing this for a wrong reason? No, I'm saying maybe you're missing some information, or maybe you're making an emotional appeal that may be disastrous shortly. And saying that to the person, and then them immediately taking it and imputing your motives. Well, you don't know nothing about me, and you don't know where I come from. You don't know what I've saw and experienced. Fine. But again, whoever impugns the motives of the other first is the one that's usually at a disadvantage. But there's still some hills that you should die on, you should be willing to fight for. And if that other person wants to impugn your motives, call it out. Say, you're impugning my motives. So now, are we at an impasse, or can we have a longer conversation to help better understand each other? I think that is where most conversations are going to get to, because most people do not argue in logic very well. So put out your charge or your concern, allow them to fire back at you, and then grab it by the horns again and say, okay, I've said what I've said, you've said what you said. Are we going to have to stop here, or are we going to be able to have a productive conversation? Come on, let's go get a hamburger and let's talk about this. That's where you want to move. If you can at all help it, try to allow that other person to be the first one to shoot the shot, to call your concern into question. Because if they know they're going to be talking to you about a concern, go ahead and let them ask you why you're so concerned, and let them impugn your motives first, and then you'll be in a much better place. Especially if you do actually possess the moral high ground. Now, I understand that if you are not possessing the moral high ground, you can use this information in a negative way. So I would encourage you, don't do that, because we're not going to mock God if we use tools against other people with the wrong reasons. But I want you to understand there are people out there that do wrong, and there have to be good people that are principled people, that are people of truth, that call them out and are willing to play the long game to bring about restoration, or to split ways mutually that doesn't harm the institution, church, family, or whatever organization is represented. Motives are constantly tainted. My best motives still are tainted. Your best motives are still tainted. So if someone calls us out for our motives, it would be wise of us to at least listen to them fully, because they may reveal something about us that we didn't see ourselves. And likewise, there's going to come a time when you need to call someone else out, and you need to be prayed up and have been so receptive to other people in the past that when you do it, other people will listen to you. Impugning motives is a hurtful situation, because it usually gets down into who we are, who we really, really want to be. But that's okay, because God likes to do heart surgery on all of us, and many times He uses human agents to help bring about a better change. You be thinking on this and figure out a situation in your life where you need to remain principled and you need to call someone else into account. But also, before you do that, make sure that you get the log out of your own eye so that you can get the speck out of someone else's. and then we'll be much better off for the conversations that ensue after that. You be thinking on these things, and we'll see you next time.